Hello everyone, and welcome to Going the Distance. Today we are going to take a look at, for real this time, pretty much one of my favorite poems. My actual favorite poem, I don't think is something I can teach sixth graders, but my second favorite poem is definitely something that I can teach my students. And so that's why we are reading and are talking about today Ozymandias by Percy Shelley. So I'm just going to start by reading the poem, and then I want to talk about the interesting things that are happening in this poem. So let's take a look. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear.
My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair."
Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. So I like this poem because it is communicating a true and rather profound idea about how people see themselves. So this poem is looking at a guy named Ozymandias, and historically this poem is really written about Ramses II, who was an Egyptian pharaoh. And you might say, I've never heard of Ramses II, the Egyptian hero. Exactly. And that's kind of the thing that happens here. Throughout human history, we have people who have been lords or kings and had tremendous empires, and they don't exist anymore. Alexander the Great almost conquered the world and controlled most of Eurasia. Not anymore. The Ottoman Empire, not anymore. The Roman Empire,
Not anymore.
and I think that's kind of a sad but true thing about human existence that appeals to me anyway, is that no matter how great we are, no matter how much we think that we have achieved, no matter how important that we think we are, for most people, in 1,000 years, either you won't be remembered or no one will care. So in this poem, it's also looking at hubris, meaning that this Egyptian pharaoh thought he was so important and so magnificent, and yet, what happened to his kingdom? The other thing that I really like about this poem is that it is a sonnet. It doesn't follow the traditional sonnet rhyme scheme, and I'll talk more about that at the end of this video, but it is still a sonnet, and sonnets are my favorite, like actual favorite kind of poem. Sonnets typically follow a particular rhyme scheme, but this one does something different. He actually has sort of like a flowing rhyme scheme, because instead of doing a typical sonnet, he both starts and ends in a typical sonnet, but he has like this looping rhyme scheme in the middle. So when we look at this poem, you'll see that it actually follows the rhyme scheme A, B, A, B, A, C, D, C, E, D, E, F, E, F. So it's almost like the A loops around, and then the E loops around. So like there's an uneven rhyme scheme, but then in its unevenness, there is this loop that happens throughout the rhyme scheme. So he's really playing around with form. And something that I've been trying to do over the last couple of weeks is get my students to write in particular forms. So he has taken the sonnet form and played around with the structure of it a little bit because he's a great poet and he wanted to be playful. No other reason than that. So when we go over through this poem, you'll see that the setting here is this guy who meets a traveler who tells the speaker of the poem about this monument. And it's only the trunks, I mean the legs, so just the legs, no trunk of the body. And then the head has like fallen off and is lay buried, half sunk in the ground. And then on that face, sunk in the ground, you can see that the sculpture understood this person's passions really well. He read his passions really well. So on this face, we see how he had this like frown, wrinkled lip, and sneer, which tells us that Ozymandias was not a good pharaoh. He was mean and perhaps too authoritarian. He was so involved in himself. He had such a huge ego. They had this huge statue created. And on the pedestal of that statue, he says,
My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair.
So like when people came to his kingdom back in the day, they would be like, oh, wow, this guy, so powerful. So there's a bit of an irony here then, that thousands of years later, this kingdom that he was so enamored with doesn't even exist anymore. There's nothing but level sand. The entire kingdom has been flattened with time. And that's kind of a scary and humbling thought. And that's why I like this poem so much, because it has these great images of what the statue looks like and how broken it is now and how this guy thought about himself, and then nothing. Nothing. So anyway, you're going to write a poem, except I don't want you to do this playful, modified sonnet that Percy did. I want you to do a traditional sonnet. So that means that when you write your poem needs to have the rhyme scheme of A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. Now you might wonder, why is there that one bit at the end that is different from the rest? And that is called a volta, because sonnets are supposed to have like this twist ending. In a couple of years, when you get to high school and you start reading the Shakespearean sonnets, I almost assigned one of those, but those are just way too difficult to read at this point. So later in life, you'll get to read the Shakespearean sonnets and you'll see that he like tells the story and then there's like a twist ending at the end. Like one of my favorite ones, My Mistress' Eyes Are Nothing Like the Sun. When you read the poem, the whole time he is talking about how ugly his girlfriend is. But then at the end, he talks about how other poets lied about their girlfriends and he's just being truthful to her. It's really cool. So part of the sonnet, in addition to the A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, G rhyme scheme that you're going to use, that last two lines, the rhyming couplets at the end. Do you notice how I've layered different elements of poetry into these writing assignments? And the very end of your poem needs to be like a twist of some kind, like a surprise ending perhaps. So I wrote a poem, which I'll share with you. I feel like if I'm getting you to write poems, I should write poems too. And of course, it's a fun exercise for me. I love writing poems. And I hope that you also have started to love writing poems, because as I said in my previous video, I've really been getting some great poems from my students. So This is my favorite format of writing poems, and I have been saving this one for last, and I hope you enjoy writing a sonnet as well. So while I read, pay attention to the rhyme scheme that I'm using, and then see what happens at the very end of the poem where I give like a twist ending. The sky has been replaced by white ceilings. Windows offer a portal for real light, but otherwise the dim lamp reflects my feelings as I watch the spread of this blight. People pass by, but I cannot see their faces. They have put up barriers between them and us. They are afraid to be kept away from their places. Stuck in their enclaves, the mind begins to rust. Screens have replaced the human touch and infiltrated the majority of time. I don't think we even know it is a crutch, because real life is only now a faint whine. If we ever manage to break free, will we even remember normalcy? And so that's my poem. And I hope that you will also write a similar poem. I'm not really giving you a particular topic, but going with our previous poem, I think this stay-at-home time has stirred up a lot of emotions in us, and poetry is all about expressing emotions. That's what it's all about. And I think that if you can tap into that emotion that you're feeling, just try to find a twist to the end of it, then I think you'll be able to write a good poem. Like here in my poem, I am talking about how everyone is distant, and we are, as we separate from each other personally, we become more attached to our devices. And then the twist is, will we ever be able to get away from these devices now that we've become so attached to them? I don't know. So anyway, everyone, that is the sonnet that you're going to write, and I look forward to reading the awesome poems that you're going to generate very soon.